manifestations that come with it. Do that first. There's a question back there. Huh?
What is ending the occupation?
The end of the occupation means pulling out from, well, it's an occupation. There were, whether you believe in a two-state or a one-state, it's irrelevant. But in 1967, there was created the Green Line. You know, and they're currently has been occupying it since then, building settlements, which, fortunately or unfortunately, has kind of ended the two-state solution. But anyways, so they've created settlements all around there. It's growing their population by natural growth, they call it. So you're going to pull out from there. You're going to give them their food.
Two-state solution?
Huh?
I mean, going back to the two-state solution?
At this point, I don't think you can. I think a lot of people stay safe and state. It's a really fun, like very like middle ground platform to stand on. Yeah. Because it's the most moderate thing. But you can't because of the settlements. I mean, unless you remove settlements, as many of them as there are. If you do, then maybe, yeah, that's possible. But right now, it's all over. It's spread out. You can't really separate and create statehood in the Palestinians.
What do you call it?
I mean, I don't know. It's really, to me, I think most people believe in the right to the self-determination. So whatever the people want, it's not for us to really decide that. But I think, I mean, based off my own American values, I think a one person, one vote democracy.
And let's call it Israel and they'll all be Israeli citizens? I mean, is that...
That's something, I feel like we have to deal with a lot more, like, urgent issues like rights before we can get to that point. So, anyone else? There's one right here.
Question over here.
Hey, Daniel, go ahead.
How you doing? So we're talking about how like the goal of BDS was to like withdraw to 367 borders and deal with housing and stuff.
Right, so self-determination.
Right. My question is, the founders of BDS, like Omar Barakat, who studies at Tel Aviv University, he said like 4 or 5 times on like Palestinian TV and American TV that like even after that happens, he's still going to call for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel. So like, when Israel does, my question. After Israel pulls out like they did in Gaza and hands like the land back to the Palestinians, are you going to still support BDS in an effort to attack Israel, or is it?
It's not in an effort. It's not okay. Let me clarify something, Daniel. It's not in an effort to attack Israel as much as it is their unjust policies.
Right. So policies. The policies end. So you wouldn't support BDS in that.
Well, it's not. No. If the policies end, they're given their rights. The occupation is over. There's no need to.
So you disagree with the founder of BDS?
I think what he's talking about, if I'm correct, I know what you're talking about. I've seen this several times. Resolution 194 of the United Nations calls for refugees' right to return to their land. United Nations, not any personal opinion, United Nations backed resolution. And currently the Palestinians are the only people in the world who are denied this right. They can't go back, including myself. I was born in the U.S. probably because my family was kicked out in a massacre in a village called Tantura in Haifa, and we're no longer allowed to return. The reason I can go back is because I'm born here and I have an American citizenship. My grandfather, however, can't. So I think when he's talking about that, he said, I'm going to continue supporting it until all the rights are met, which is true. And that is a right.
So he hasn't said that. Like,
he hasn't said, no, that's what he's referring to when he's talking about I'm going to continue supporting BDS, because the BDS calls for all inalienable rights to be restored.
So when he says the end of the occupation of 67 borders, he means the right of return to Haifa.
No, I think when he's talking about the end of occupation of 67 borders, I think there's that, and there's also continued. It says, I mean, if you read what the Palestinian call, the Palestinian PNC, the National Council, who made this call for the boycott, divestment, sanctions, it's in order to restore all rights, and that's one of them. So.
All right.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. Would you be willing to give up your cell phone and computer in order to commit for BDS?
Commit for BDS?
In order to, like, the BDS is boycott, divestment, sanctions. The cell phone, your
yeah,
so
computer, okay, so a lot of Israeli technology is behind this. You're absolutely right.
Would you be willing to give up your cell phone?
Would I be willing to give up my cell phone? I mean, yeah, actually, I had to go from not choosing Motorola, who does all the cameras on the wall, and these sort of sensors, I don't know if it could sense like motion sensors, is done by Motorola. So I've personally boycotted. I quit my phone and switched to another company that's not invested. Now, a lot of technologies like Intel or things that are in your own computer are by not just Israeli companies, but also like Israeli, these Israeli people who came up with them. You can only do so much, but you do what you can. There's a million other companies we can work on until then. So, she has a question. Go ahead.
Earlier there was a poem read justifying suicide bombers. You guys all cheered at the end, and now you're saying that don't condone violence. How is that?
I can't speak.
She can't speak for that
I
because
wasn't there,
the
but
poet,
I-
the poet's actually here, I think, somewhere. And if she's not here, she wasn't
ask her
condoning.
personally,
If you were listening, she wasn't condoning suicide bombing. She was saying, in terms of the environment that they may be bred in, it was called breeding suicide bombers. She wasn't saying that we support suicide bombing. She's not part of Students for Justice in Palestine, and I don't know if she's a student here at SDSU. But she was just speaking from, it had nothing to do with Leena's
Justifying suicide bombers.
Not justifying.
The poem, you would understand that she was talking about the
So under the
conditions.
circumstances, suicide bombing.
Wait a minute, hold on. What are you
If
saying?
you had heard the poem, I
It
can't
was a
explain
lady who
something you
just came
didn't
here.
hear. Okay, if you listened, then you would understand that she was talking about the conditions that bred suicide bombers. What we were celebrating is that she gave voice to the conditions that breed an unhappy people, that breed an angry people. That they are angry enough to suicide bomb is not beside the point. It's so far beside the point.
Justify that action.
We can't speak on behalf of the poet who is not here, but if you want to ask people individually, I highly doubt anyone amongst us would say that they support suicide bombing.
No one supports suicide
It's not
bombing.
about that. Excuse me?
You cheered at the end of the
But
poem.
she's
We
gonna
cheered at the end of the poem because it was a beautiful speech. It was a
she's
beautiful
expressing
voice
herself. I don't think
about the
it's-
conditions of the Palestinians.
And I don't think it's so simple
not-
to
not-
assume
not-
that everyone here is
Not the
supporting
violent
that, you know?
consequences that the few Palestinians lose in protest.
Yeah, listen, I think in regards to suicide bombers, I mean, it's certainly, it's
You know
It's
what
horrible,
it
and
is?
when
What it
people-
is, let's give this a broader perspective. Because I hear in the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, Israelis and Palestinians and Jewish and Muslims, and let's count the structure of power. Let's go back to history. I
they're
mean,
not equal.
England is never mentioned. England ruled 2/3 of the world, including Israel. It was not founded by David. The Jews did not go and conquer and found Israel. Queen Elizabeth just gave it to him. She'd give it to Prince Charles for his birthday. She can do that. She owns the damn thing. But they gave it to Israel, to the European guilt, because they turned boatloads away during the Holocaust. Boatloads away, those Christian Protestants. And they gave them Israel because they didn't want to take care of the Jews that they had left to slaughter. So they put them over in Israel. And then the U.S. came in when Britain was too poor to protect the territory. The U.S. came in and said they would take over as long as you get rid of those Muslims. And that's what they did. It's not so much the Jews are responsible for anything. Israel, the Israeli government is more content in being an American military base than being a Jewish state. Real Jews would never treat the Palestinians that way if the U.S. wasn't forcing them to do it. Let's just address that. I mean, we're all talking about how angry we are at the Jews. Why aren't we angry at our own American government? We sanction it. We protect it. We give them their guns. We train them. We give them their money. We finance all of that. It's not Jews. Jews and Muslims and Christians have been living on that land for 10,000 years.
Exactly.
Perfect peace and harmony until England got there. And England fucked up every country. And they never mention it. And the U.S. currently, you've got the whole Middle Eastern eruption that we have financed. We have sanctioned every dictator there. We have sanctioned all of their dirty economic policy. Now they're rising up. We're calling it some Muslim uprising. It's not a Muslim uprising. It's an oppressed uprising. And we are the oppressors. The U.S. of A. It used to be England. Now it's America. But when you talk about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, don't leave the structures of power out. Israel couldn't treat them that way if the U.S. didn't back them and if the U.S. didn't force them to do it.
Absolutely. And I think
Exactly.
also it's very important to note there's absolutely nothing Jewish about carrying out these massacres and killing
No,
people.
there's
There's nothing
The
Jewish
Jews
about
never
that.
did it before. They don't even have a history of it. So why would they be so brutal now? And they were only that brutal when the U.S. walked in.
Well, accepting all of this hyperbole about the U.S. and all these things, never mind all of that.
Never mind that. That's
Well,
a huge
no, just for the purpose of my question.
Okay.
For the purpose of my question, what do you think the Palestinians can do to distance themselves from Hamas and the suicide bombing? And we had a whole big question here about suicide bombing.
Yeah.
And for better or for worse,
Yeah.
when people in America, when people in Europe, when people across the world hear Palestine, automatically the first thing they think about is suicide bombing.
Yeah,
What
that's
is
a lot
the
of-
obligation, or is there an obligation on the part of the Palestinians to distance themselves from this
Yeah,
prospect,
I
and what
think-
can they do?
I think there's a lot of focus put on the Palestinians. What are you gonna do as oppressed people? Which sounds a little bit off. But I agree. There obviously it takes two to tango. Hold on, I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to answer your question. What can they do? Is I think what they've been doing, and what they're going to continue to do, and what is a growing movement and is starting. And I've said this about 327 times. Is boycott, divestment, sanctions. It's a non-violent approach to boycotting these companies and divesting from these corporations until their rights are restored. And that, I think, if this continues to grow, if more people continue to engage in this, you're going to have a growing movement, as we see now, that will. There's no need to. I mean, who wakes up in the morning and says, "I'm going to"? I mean, you've got to be in a really shitty situation. You have to be in a really. I mean, it's not even you. I don't think you, because you don't have an occupied mind. I don't either. And at the end of the day, we come home and watch TV and get to watch Grey's Anatomy. So at the thing, so you can't. It's hard to put yourself in their position, but when they're at a point where they're born, it's not that it just came across them. They're born into a situation where you're not having a secure job. Becoming a doctor is a privilege. It sounds kind of senseless if you're in Gaza, considering they don't have jobs anyways. These sorts of things, I mean, in no way can you justify killing on either side. Like I said, whether you're a child in Sidrat, in Israel, or you're a mother or father in Gaza, all human life is sacred. But it's different when you have resources, when you have freedom, when you have all these privileges in one side and none in the other. So I think what they can do is continue to boycott in a nonviolent manner. And I think what Israel can do is end oppression and stop killing, mass murdering many people.
But do you think that somebody needs to step up and then form a cohesive rejection of Hamas and those ideologies?
I think
because we don't hear that. I mean, I understand, because I'm not.
Absolutely.
I'm throwing this off as ignorant. I'm not throwing it off on the Palestinians and saying, "What are you going to do?"
No, I hear you.
You've obviously told us what the Israelis are going to do, but I don't understand.
Yeah.
When I go down to Texas, if I walk into a bar in Texas, or I walk into a bar in Bakersfield, or I go into Los Angeles, and I say, "Hey, I talked to a Palestinian," I'm going to get jokes about bombers.
Absolutely.
So what do you think needs to be done about that?
Honestly, and I think it's people like you. I don't know your name, but I think it's people like you and everyone here who can speak to that. One, two. It's you're right. The stereotype exists. I kind of lost my train of thought. 1 second. What were you saying before about you're not here to?
Well, I'm not here to. I mean, you were telling me, throwing back what we can do, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to understand what's being done. I mean, for me, the question, the response I want to get, what I want to get from Palestinians
Oh,
is
that's I remember.
how
Thank
do
you.
they stand?
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that someone needs to step up and say this,
Do you
and I
think
don't
that?
think. Do I? Absolutely. And here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, is that the problem isn't with me speaking or anyone else speaking out. I think the problem is with the reception. I think so many people, and I can't tell you so many people. I mean, do you think the Palestinians are going to support a government that's essentially also caused them so much oppression? No. Isn't the reason because of Hamas that Gaza happened as well? So do you think there's still like that standing support? I mean, it doesn't there. The point is that just common sense will tell anyone that so many people have spoken out against Hamas. But I mean, again, as much as it was a democratically elected government, whatever, that's fine. It's not our place to say, fine. But still, a lot of people have, Palestinians themselves in Gaza who elected them, have started out and said that. Leaders have. Right now, I mean, there's a practically an impossible war, unfortunately. So much disunity, and I actually believe worse than the Israelis are the Palestinian Authority themselves, who are oppressing their own people. I mean, the Palestinians are facing two occupations. One of the Palestinian Authority, I totally agree. One of the Palestinian Authority, corrupt, and then one of the Israelis, oppressors. Both are oppressing them. So it's just a matter of like people like you and me, when you're going into that bar and you're talking to these people, it's like, hey, I don't care if you're a staunch Zionist, that's cool. But the people are facing human rights issues, and we need to be able to say that's not okay. That's all.
As Kevon mentioned, if you guys want to stick around, we'll be having the wall up till 5 p.m. today. But we have Miko Piled. He'll be giving a presentation later tonight on the myth of Zionism and AIPAC. It's 7 p.m. at Casa Real, which is an Aztec Center. Feel free to look around and get a flyer. Thank you.